Okay, imagine this for a second. You're a U.S. citizen, passport in hand, heading home to the States. But instead of just breezing through customs, you hit, well, let's call it turbulence. Unexpected hassle.
Yeah, not exactly the welcome home you'd expect.
Exactly. And that's kind of the unsettling ground we're covering today. We're digging into some, honestly, quite striking material. It's from a video transcript, David Pakman show. He became a citizen, I think, around 16.
That's right, naturalized citizen.
And he's been getting these warnings from immigration lawyers. Serious warnings about traveling internationally now, even as a citizen. So our mission really, for you listening, is to unpack these warnings. What's behind them? What's the context? And, what could this actually mean for naturalized citizens? Or maybe even more broadly, let's get into it.
Well, the first thing that jumps out is how personal this feels, right? It's not some abstract policy debate.
No.
This is lawyers giving direct advice to their client, someone who's been American for, what, decades?
Right.
And the core issue they're raising, according to the source, isn't necessarily, oh, you'll get deported. Not for him specifically, anyway.
Okay.
It's more the potential for, the transcript uses the phrase unpredictably uncomfortable or uncomfortably unpredictable experiences when he tries to come back in.
Uncomfortably unpredictable. That's quite a phrase. So we're not talking about being barred entry necessarily based on these warnings for him.
Not barred entry, no. But the potential for significant hassle.
Okay, but the examples he gives to back this up, they sound pretty serious. I mean, actual reports of U.S. citizens getting detained at the border.
Yeah, held questioned for hours sometimes.
And often without explanation, right? That's the unsettling part.
Exactly. And the transcript suggests this isn't just, random bad luck.
Right. It connects it to a wider pattern.
It seems so.
Yeah.
It points to maybe an uptick in these kinds of things happening, especially, it mentions, to dual nationals or maybe people with names or accents that someone at the border flags as foreign. The very fact that lawyers are apparently saying, hey, maybe think twice before you travel, or even have legal help lined up before you go.
Yeah.
That suggests something more systemic might be worrying them, not just isolated incidents.
And the transcript brings up the political context, mentioning the possibility of a second Trump administration. It uses the term Stephen Miller-style policies.
Yes, that's mentioned as a key factor driving these concerns.
So for listeners maybe not deeply familiar, what characterized those policies that's causing this apprehension now, according to the source?
Well, generally what was observed was definitely heightened scrutiny at borders, stricter enforcement interpretations, and often a public discourse that could feel unwelcoming or questioning towards immigrant communities.
Right.
So the worry seems to be a potential return to, or even an intensification of, that kind of approach, leading to this climate of uncertainty.
What's really interesting, though, is the interpretation in the source material about the goal behind all this potential hassle. It suggests the primary aim might not actually be mass deportation of citizens, maybe not yet, anyway, but more about creating fear, intimidation.
That's the theory presented, yes. To sort of make naturalized citizens feel, well, less secure, like they don't fully belong, maybe.
So just to be crystal clear here, this isn't just about potentially longer waits at the airport passport control.
No, it goes deeper than that, according to this perspective.
It's potentially about undermining that fundamental sense of security, that feeling of belonging for naturalized citizens when they come home to their own country. That feels huge, a real shift.
And think about the ripple effects. If a significant group of citizens starts feeling targeted, or even just viewed with extra suspicion, what happens?
Well, yeah, you'd imagine people might start self-censoring, right?
Exactly. Maybe hesitate to speak out, join a protest?
Or even apply for certain jobs, or government benefits they're entitled to.
Potentially. The fear could have a chilling effect on civic participation. The source even mentions the extreme end of that, people perhaps considering leaving the U.S. altogether.
It sounds pretty extreme when you put it like that, and the transcript makes a point about historical context, doesn't it?
It does. It highlights how, say, 10 or 15 years ago, the idea of a U.S. president openly talking about deporting or trying to strip citizenship from naturalized citizens would have seemed, well, almost unthinkable to many.
Yeah, like something from a different era entirely. How much that perspective seems to have shifted, according to the source.
And it's not just rhetoric. The transcript points to actual actions from the previous administration.
Like what specifically?
Well, it mentions launching a task force specifically to re-examine old naturalization records, looking for reasons, potentially technical ones, to revoke citizenship.
Revoke citizenship based on paperwork errors from years ago.
The concern raised is about the scope, whether it could catch people who made honest mistakes, alongside actual fraud cases.
Mm.
Legally, denaturalization is possible for fraud, but the worry was about casting a wider net. And this was happening alongside those broader discussions and actions around deportations, targeting different immigration statuses, which, according to the source, implicitly included naturalized citizens in the climate of concern.
Then there's that really stark contrast the source draws. It compares the current situation to the reaction during the peak of the COVID pandemic.
Ah, yes. The border measures, then.
Right, remember the arguments. Needing a negative test to fly home, maybe facing quarantine. Some people were calling that tyranny.
The argument being you absolutely cannot deny a U.S. citizen entry, period.
Exactly. So the transcript points out the relative quiet now from some of those same voices regarding these reports of citizens being detained, interrogated, sometimes separated from family at the border.
It's a pointed comparison. It suggests, or at least questions, if there's maybe some inconsistency in how border control issues are perceived, perhaps depending on who is being affected or the political climate.
Right. It raises questions about whether there's a partisan lens being applied.
Potentially, yes. That's the implication drawn in the source.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive into these warnings, they paint a picture that's, well, frankly, quite troubling.
It is concerning.
The main takeaway from the source isn't necessarily about imminent mass deportation of citizens, but more about this potential strategy of using border experiences to create fear, to intimidate naturalized individuals.
And the potential consequences of that fear are significant, impacting personal freedom, that sense of belonging, and maybe even civic engagement.
It really challenges the whole idea of what U.S. citizenship means, doesn't it? If some citizens face fundamentally different scrutiny just trying to come home.
It raises profound questions, absolutely, about equality, about the promise inherent in becoming a citizen. Is that promise being applied consistently?
And that leaves us, and you, with a pretty big question to chew on. Given all this, what are the broader implications here for how we understand citizenship and belonging in America today? How might this potential reality for some citizens change your view of what being an American means? Definitely something to think about.